Sunday night Safran, a babble about religion, politics and all things ethnic, with John Safran and Father Bob Maguire.
Good evening, dear listeners. Good evening,
How
Father
are you,
Bob.
comrade?
Everyone, including Father Bob, but you two listeners, put your phone on vibrate.
I
Vibrate.
like vibrate. You know, it's as close, isn't it?
Whilst for the next 2 hours,
What about
we
back?
entertain you with this great range of guests, including a man who's running a doomsday preppers
Oh, yes.
dating
That's
website.
interesting.
So that's if you believe, like,
In the end.
yeah, like the society's going to collapse and you're going to be
Yeah.
stuck in your bunker
Yeah.
in Iowa with your guns and your frozen food.
Pizzas, yes.
If that's your belief system, then you want to meet a young lady or young man with
Yeah.
the same
Is that what it's all
beliefs.
about?
Yes.
A companion?
And then you can live in the bunker together. Jeff Oakes is going to be joining us from Dallas, Texas.
Lovely
Where
idea.
else? Angry Anderson, the controversial former singer of Rose Tattoo.
Mate of mine,
In
of
fact, they
course.
weren't that controversial.
No.
But now he's controversial because he's becoming a conservative political
Yes,
activist.
he is indeed.
He's on Go Back to Where You Came
Yeah.
From. And he's going to come in. Also, was the producer of Go Back to Where You Came From, which is, of course, that SBS television series where people try to experience what it's like to be a boat person coming to Australia. We have got, from the United States, a transgressive comedian, Anthony Jeselnik. If you haven't heard of him, he might become really famous soon.
Yeah.
He's pretty famous in America, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I don't know how to judge whether people know him in
Charlie
Australia.
Sheeney did.
Yeah, he did. He does like the roasts in America, and his comedy's really offensive. And so we're going to be
Do
talking
you
about
do roasts?
offensive comedy.
We're not roast people, are we? I don't
Oh
like
no,
roasts.
no. That would imply our shtick relied on constantly insulting each
Yeah,
other.
that's what I mean.
Yeah, of course we'd never do that.
No.
I'm roasting
Angry
you.
Anderson-
I'm roasting you about your claims that we don't roast.
Angry Anderson roasted me at my gala dinner.
We're also going to be
surprise.
talking to Stella
Oh, lovely Stella. I
Young.
love Stella.
She's from the ABC Disability Portal, I think it's called Ramp
Oh, that's
Up.
nice,
That's
yeah.
that's online, and she's calling us from the Paralympics. But we're going to ask her about in-house secret fights within the disability community.
Indeed.
That you don't usually hear about because they try to keep on like a happy
Yeah.
face. So, like a big example that I know of is in the people who are deaf. There's people who are deaf who are like, we've got to find a cure for this.
Yeah, all that.
Would it not be great if I could hear again? And then there's other in the deaf community who are like, hey, screw you. This is
Yeah,
our.
that's right.
This is my
ours.
identity.
Thank
saying
you.
saying you want to cure me of deafness.
Yeah,
It's like
it's an
saying to a
insult.
black person,
Thank you.
you're going to cure you of your blackness
Yeah.
and try to make you white.
Yeah,
But
but
surely there must be other fights we don't know about.
And she has a go at
I reckon-
Professor Singer.
Yes. Now, Bob,
Yes. What dirt
When
have you
I-
got on me this week?
when I was around 11, 12 years old,
Yes.
it suddenly struck me that I was still calling my mother mummy and my dad daddy.
Yeah, that's
but
all
somehow
right, so
all my
nice.
friends around me,
Yeah.
they'd somehow, the next thing I know, everyone around me is like, hey dad, hey mum, hey dad. And I'm like, what the hell? And it sounded too forced to suddenly...
Of course it would.
It's like, what happened? When did everyone stop calling their daddies and mummy
Yeah.
and start calling them dad and mum? And what happened? Why did I miss it? So for the next few years, if you're wondering how I solved the problem,
Yeah.
because it sounded too clunky, like to suddenly go, mum? Like it
Overnight.
sounded try hard, or like John,
Yes.
So what I did for the next few years, I just avoided,
Anything.
yes, saying mum or dad. And I had to like work my life around there. So I'd have to be in their line of sight and say, hey, can you pass me
Yeah, that's right. Because you've
the
got
bag
nothing,
over there?
You've
Because
got nothing to call them.
yeah, because I couldn't say, hey, you.
But you wouldn't call them by their first names either.
Oh, no, of course not.
No.
I actually, you know what I did do
What
with
did
my
you
dad?
do?
The first thing was I started calling him Papa in this
Yeah,
sort of
that's
like,
nice.
but like, I sort of like using irony to get like, it's like, ha ha ha, I'm calling you Papa because it's such a ridiculous thing to say. So it meant I could avoid, the whole daddy,
Yeah, the whole
dad
thing,
problem.
isn't it, eh?
What did you call mother?
No, but she was gone, darling. She was
Yeah,
dead.
what did you call Mother when she was alive?
No, we had names. I suppose Mum. I can't remember. Mum. And he wasn't there either, Ma, so I don't know if I ever called him anything. So now you've opened a can of worms. What are they calling them now? What's this one called? Oppa.
Oppa?
Yeah, because I heard somebody call, I think it must be Grandpa. Thank you, Dutch for Grandpa. Yeah, but that's interesting. But you never, and then of course she was gone. So you never had a chance to call her anything.
In my recent sojourn to the Deep South, I was hanging out a bit with this, you'll be unsurprised to know, white supremacist.
Yes.
And he lived on this farm, and it was like a beautiful 10-acre farm, except he lived in this little grotty trailer. But there was a big, beautiful house there, 2-story house next to him. And this white supremacist was 52 years old. And he lived in the little trailer, and his mother lived in the big, wooden, beautiful house.
Yes, yes.
And the 52-year-old white supremacist, one of his big grievances was that he was finding it hard to find a girlfriend. He had an ex-wife or whatever, but he was going on all these dating sites, and he was talking about how, it's really hard. First of all, anyone Googles my name. Suddenly, it's not like women really want to particularly hang out with you once they know you're a white supremacist. But he said another thing. He goes, people come up the dirt road here, and how am I going to get a girl up the dirt road here? And then she sees I live in this trailer. I live, and so I said to him, why don't you just lie? Why don't you just fake? Why don't you sort of move into the house? And he goes, it's not honourable. It's not honourable because a man should not live with his mother at age 52. And I said, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. But what about just when you're kind of courting a girl? Why don't you just kind of fake it a bit and pretend that the house, because the house was big and beautiful, is your house, or, you leave it unspoken, and you just said, that wouldn't be the honourable thing to do. I don't know. Do you reckon he should have faked it?
So
I just know. Do you know, occasionally, if you're in certain circles where there's wealth, you'll have a young, just say you're 19 or whatever, and there'll be another 19-year-old in your circle, and they live in this improbably great apartment, and you just know that,
it's in what's probably
it's the parent, it's the rich parents or what, but it's the most awkward thing to bring up. You just have to not say it.
What about banter? You can't say, hey, listen.
I would prefer to say a racist joke that would be less awkward than bringing up with a rich 19-year-old that, come on, I know we're over here at your place and you're having this delightful dinner party. It's we all freaking know. We think, no 19-year-old could afford this. Basically your parents are funding this.
Yeah, and they're in the backyard somewhere in a camper van. Oh, that's very interesting. So you mix in different circles, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're so salt of the earth,
well,
Bob.
I'm not...
I don't know what goes out there on the real world because, I'm at my tea party. Well,
exactly.
What about when I was hanging out with the white supremacists? Why wasn't that? Safran, you're out there with the real people, the working people. No, you wait until I bring up some 19-year-old in his apartment.
I'm a bit worried about that.
And suddenly I'm a toff. Yeah. Suddenly I'm in Las Vegas with Prince Harry.
Why couldn't you say straight to the man's face, this isn't your place, is it?
Who? Oh, the
toff.
The toff. Yeah.
You see what I mean? Or you're frightened he'll throw you out.
Well, that's sort of I was taking the toff story to the white supremacists. I was saying, listen, you go to Melbourne.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. Yes. Why don't you get it? You didn't actually tell him to get rid of his mother.
No.
Not that. You didn't go that white supremacist far.
No. I didn't say get rid of your mother, and you can come up with some anyway, whatever.
Offer a plot in the backyard or something. You know what I mean? See, because the film's going that way. Now you haven't got a film; you've got a book.
Yeah, what? Your film?
Will there be little twists in my film? Your film? Your book?
What?
Are there little twists in it?
Yeah,
mother's found in the backyard.
I'm having a bit of trouble. To be honest, can I just quickly get this out before we go to the first song? This week, dear listener, writing my book, I was having a bit of trouble because there's I did all these interviews overseas, and they've gone for hours and hours and hours. So, there's transcription services. You can you send out your audio, you save it as an MP3 file, you send it off, and then they'll type it and they charge you, right? And anyway, you go online, and it's a lot cheaper if you send it to India.
God's sake, you sound like Julia Gillard. No, the other one.
Gina Reinhardt.
Gina Reinhardt says the Chinaman will work for nothing.
So when I was kind of sorting it out, what should I do or whatever, I sent, cause I had I have 30 hours, 40 hours of these like audio recordings, right? So I sent some to India, and then I sent some to Australia. And the Indian ones, like now that I'm actually typing it, it's like the words are all wrong. It's not the quality. Like, like I'm reading the transcript, and it's like I said to the noise, and the noise said to me. So I said back to the noise, and the noise said, I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then I have to like spool through the original thing, and it's lawyer. They've like, because to their Hindu ears, their Hindu ears, it sounds like lawyer sounds like noise.
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
the book might be more interesting if you know what I mean?
It doesn't need that. So I've learnt my lesson. I'm not going to be outsourcing to India anymore.
So Gina's wrong.
You know whose fault it was? Right. I'm not blaming it on anyone. It's Ben Napastek, who edits the Good Weekend magazine at The Age. When I told him I had these transcripts, he goes, hey, just keep it on the lowdown, but like send them off to India. A lot cheaper.
Well, you've just exposed him, the poor man.
Sorry about
Is it
that.
illegal?
No, it's not illegal. It's just like a bit like Gina Reinhard wanting to... Oh, do you know Gina Reinhard, who this week brought up in a talk that it seemed a bit unfair that you can't pay people $2 a day like in Africa.
Yes.
I thought of a tweet, but I said, I passed it by a friend. I said, will I get away with this tweet? Because it's obviously you're going to get away with having a go at Gina Reinhard and her $2 thing. But there was a slight, like the witty bit of the thing. Because, the spoonful of sugar to make the medicine go, might have been a bit of a... Because you know how her she's a bit cuddly?
Did you work out?
So I had this really good tweet, except it did mention a bit of the humour came out of her cuddliness, and I passed it by a friend, and she said, "Don't do it. Do not do it because it's just not. You don't get away with it." So I didn't. Sorry, dear listeners. If you see me on the tram this week or at all, ask me what the tweet was, and I'll tell you the tweet. I'll tell you, Bob.
Yeah, it's like Jermaine Greer and her Julia Gillard comments.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Coming up next, the prepper dating website man, Jeff Oakes, joining us from Dallas, Texas.
Oh.
Sunday Night Safran.
With John Safran and Father Bob Maguire on Triple J.
Bob Maguire, John Safran together in the studio.
And we have on the telephone, all the way from Dallas, Texas, the founder of a prepper website called prepperdating.com.
Which
His
I'll
name
need.
is Jeff Oakes. How are you, Jeff?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Good. Now, first, tell us what a prepper is.
Well, a prepper is somebody who prepares for the unexpected with regards to every aspect of your life. The food you may keep on your shelves, the gas in your vehicle, just things like that. You're just preparing for any possible problem that may go wrong.
And I gather this is it's quite popular amongst the survivalist community.
It is, yeah, especially with the new reality shows going on. There's there's everybody from the regular prepper to the doomsday prepper, quite the extreme on the other end.
And so you're talking about things such as society collapsing because of one thing or the other. Maybe there's, a civil war breaks out, or the electricity goes, and it's to be able to survive in a bunker for a year, is it?
For some of the more extreme preppers, yes. I'm more on the basic end of things where I just kind of prep. We've got a lot of canned goods and things like that, and stored grains, rices, that sort of stuff. But yeah, there are those who believe in any number of things. The solar flares and war, and you never really know, I guess, what's going to happen. But there's the extreme ones really kind of go pretty far with it. Yeah, that's the conspiracy community. I guess a lot of people would see, like people who think, we're getting to the days of Armageddon in America. Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. And how rational is it to plan in this way? Well, in the big picture, it really doesn't ever hurt anything. I mean, you're stockpiling food or supplies, and if nothing ever happens, you're none the worse than you were. You're basically covered for maybe your retirement if that's what happens. And have you ever had to pry your crowbar into the emergency supplies for any reason ever since you've been a prepper? Short of running sort of an ingredient for a recipe, not really. I've been very fortunate. we said, we've taken some of them. You have to rotate your stock anyway. So, if I put something on the shelf and it turns out it's going to expire this year or whatever the case may be, we may pull it, to take on a camping trip or something like that, just so that we've got fresh stock in place.
And why a prepper website in particular?
Well,
a dating website, I mean.
Correct. Yeah, I started prepperdating.com it's only been about 3-4 months ago. And what happened was I had been in the industry for a while anyway, just as a side project. I had done a few other dating websites as well that are still functional to this day. And I was watching one of the new reality shows. I understand you like American Pickers, but there was a show on about survival or doomsday preppers, I think it was, and they kind of showcased a bunch of these people. And I noticed that some, half of them maybe were married, and the other half seemed to be single. And I thought, wow. How would these people meet? Because it's kind of a weird thing to bring up, I suppose, in a conversation. By the way, I'm stockpiling for the end of the world or whatever the case may be. And so I basically put together a site in a couple of days' time, played with a few different software, and surprisingly started getting a lot of media requests.
And has there been a lot of successful coupling up?
Well, the site's only a few months old, and we've, unlike the previous sites, where we had I put kind of an advertising budget out. Literally within a few days of submitting the site out there, I started getting media requests from all over the place, and so we've got several hundred members at this point, but
no weddings yet. And we see stuff from the 1950s where in America everyone's learning how to duck and cover from the Russians dropping the nuclear bomb, and so I was kind of wondering, is this whole fascination with doomsday and people being neurotic about the end of the world, is that something that's particularly happening now in America in 2012 because of the economy and things like that, or at any point in American history is there this sort of doomsday neurosis going on?
Well, I don't know that it's totally isolated to America. I know that it's picked up a lot of steam with the reality shows because there's a few of them on TV now. But if you go back even to the bunkers of, I guess, the 50s and things like that, there are quite a few of those still around. So I think it's just something that happens. People maybe who've lived through the Great Depression and things like that, they knew what it was like to, basically to eat dog food. And so I think a lot of people maybe kind of have that in the back of their minds, and then of course we've had a number of events over the past 10 or 15 years that kind of, fuel that even more. And I think that movement is just really starting to grow, and maybe hopefully.
What are those events? Do you mean like Hurricane Katrina and 9/11 and things like that?
Absolutely. The housing bust and all of the subsequent things that happened. Even if you look in Japan here just recently, totally unexpected, of course, when they had the earthquake and the nuclear reactor problem. Things like that have even further added to it.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck with the website, prepperdating.com. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're listening to Sunday Night Safran with John Safran and Father Bob Maguire on Triple J.
Later on the show, we'll hang out with American comedian Anthony Jeselnik. He did the roast of Charlie Sheen on Comedy Central, and shortly rocker and political conservative Angry Anderson will be joining us. John Safran, Bob Maguire together in the studio on Triple J.
As well as Stella Young from the Paralympics telling us about all the awkward behind-the-scenes secret fighting.
Yeah, I like Stella Young.
That happens. A few things about money, Father Bob.
Yeah, what do you want to know?
My friend this week cut off her charity donations.
Yeah? Too poor?
Yeah, kind of, not really in a position anymore. And, like the way everything's like direct debit these days, and they just draw from your credit card every month. So it's sort of a bit invisible.
It's awful.
It's a bit invisible or whatever. But she finally said, enough's enough, because she's just picked up one or two every year for 10 years, and now,
But she got 10 or something?
Yeah, she got most, World Vision, Greenpeace, all
Father
that.
Bob Maguire Foundation.
There was also, the one that really pushed her over the edge was, there's some self-help guy in America. I think his name's Christian Carter or something, and he does this kind of self-help book or packages, and she bought one DVD. It's about how to get on with men and find a husband and all that. But she signed up, and then She kept on getting sent a DVD every month, and she couldn't figure out how to. Anyway, blah, and she was feeling a bit guilty about, you know, because there's like some kid in some village next to the well that sends her like a letter.
Yes.
And like, is he going to be like cut off? So I said, I looked at the website because I just thought that it can't be like that. Are you serious? Like, don't they have, like, it'd just be a logistical nightmare that, you know, what's his name? Tim Costello.
Tim Costello's waiting for
he's there.
Susie's money to come before he can feed the baby next door.
Yeah, like, surely that's a bit of a, like how much of that is true? That your individual, like, $30 or whatever goes to that individual. And I went to, like, the websites to suss it out because my friend was kind of feeling a bit uncomfortable. It's very woolly language.
Yeah, it's all woolly.
Very like, because they address that exact question, like, if I cut off my money, what happens to the little kid?
Yes.
And the most woolly thing where they try to keep up the narrative that your money's going there, whilst kind of conceding it doesn't actually work like that. Anyway.
Yeah, well, that's the whole business about the disappearance of my food van. Because questions are being asked all over the place. Well, who's getting fed now? There's no food van. And I say, oh, they're getting fed because there's another food van. And then you say, but we're not feeding them.
What?
Somebody else up at the churches. See, I mean, it's the questions you ask. The public is entitled to ask questions about these charities like mine. Father Bob, we're going to take a picture of you down on the street. I said, darling, I don't go on the street. You say, oh, but we've got to have you on the street because otherwise people won't contribute to the cause. I said, well, I mean, what do you want me to do? Just go down on the street and pretend I'm on the goddamn street. I can go on the street any time because, in fact, I've been mixed up with those people for 40 years. Therefore, people on the street know me because they knew me as a child, you see. But it's not honest to drag me onto the street and say he's on the street every night. It's not honest.
Now, Bob, do you reckon, like, charities have pushed their luck a bit in that it's now not controversial to be cynical about, like, even mainstream people are cynical about charities in a way they weren't, like, maybe 15 years ago. Like, it would have been the most controversial thing to come out and go, oh, I wonder how the Red Cross spends their money. Oh, I wonder how the Salvation Army. Whilst now it seems like everyone's just slowly, everything's been pushed and everyone's been burnt just a little so much that it's a pretty normal conversation now.
Pretty normal now, I think, and everybody's got to get used to it. It's got to be that transparent. You know, it's harsh. It's almost ugly now.
Amnesty International was actually on the phone to me the other week. I, you know, signed up member every year or whatever. And they're trying to get me to sign up to some extra thing where they deduct something from my bank every month. And I was kind of like, well, no, I'm just happy with, you know, just giving it once and you're not doing. And they just kept on pushing and pushing and pushing. And I thought to myself, if they're as good, you know, when they're like on the phone to like the president of Burma, or, you know, on the phone to the guy up in Uzbekistan who's got the prisoners in there, like all these prisoners are going to be released pretty soon because like they're pretty good at like putting the hard word on you.
Indeed, I'm no good at that. I'm a beggar. I'd rather go begging, and if somebody says, I believe blah, 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 so all right, well, if you want to give some money for God's sake. But I don't want to make a case, an unfair, emotional imposition on people. You know what I mean? So, go on.
The line was a bit crackly before with the prepper man, so we kind of cut it a bit short. I was wondering, because he said, you know, this kind of whole doomsday thing is all around the world. It's not particularly an American thing. I reckon it's not, you know, I think
surely not around the world.
Well, because remember how we talked to that economist a couple of months ago on the show about the difference between being poor in Australia and being poor in America, and having that social security net, like, you know, with Medicare. Whilst in America, if you're uninsured and you get knocked over by a car, you can suddenly be in $400,000 debt for the rest of your life. So I reckon that whole, when you're over in America, that whole thing kind of weighs over you a lot, I reckon, over the society a lot, that things could go really bad really quickly in a way that's not quite there in lots of Australia. Not all of Australia, but lots of Australia.
But does it weigh over the election?
Yeah, it just weighs over, it just weighs over your life.
True, but then again, voting is voluntary, so I suppose you can't judge it.
Now, do you know who died this week?
Who died this week?
Reverend Moon from the Moonies.
Yes.
Now, he was a Korean-American cult leader who founded a church called the Unification Church. And I think they were like a big cult back in the 60s?
Yeah, back in the 60s, they had a house in Elwood.
Oh, really?
Big house. We took it off them.
So it's sort of like those hippie cults that you see kind of parodied on like Maxwell Smart or the old episodes of Batman.
Yep.
They're sort of like based on the Moonies.
Yep.
And I do remember
the Moonies.
I do remember being warned by the cult buster who came to our school about the Moonies because we're going to go to university, and they said that there's Moonies at the university.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he died this week. He was a controversial
Unification, that's what they were called.
Yeah.
The
he was 92 years
Church.
old. He apparently recently said, "I will continue to lead the church from the spirit world."
Oh, yeah.
Moon claimed that when he was 15, Jesus asked him to take on the work of building God's kingdom on earth. He founded his church in 1954. In 1974, he said, "I must go beyond the failures of Adam, the failure of Abraham, the failure of Moses, the failure of Jacob, Moses, and John the Baptist, and Jesus, to restore human beings to their intended position as God's perfect children." Because he was crucified before he could marry and have children. So obviously this is a bit like if you're like a conventional Christian, this is very dicey.
Yeah, a bit spooky.
But the interesting thing was, because he was a very rich man, and in America, he bought the Washington Times, there's two big papers in Washington, the Washington Post, which is more famous, and then there's the Washington Times. And he was a very conservative man, and the paper was very conservative. So the Republicans would have to suck up to him because he was really good, because he'd always put their messages and the Republican point of view in his successful paper. So George Bush would have to turn up to these
Mooney conventions.
Yeah, these Mooney conventions. And it was always a bit weird because obviously Republicans, another big group that they have under their wing is the evangelical Christians, who would find the Moonies really, really offensive.
Yes.
And if he could just turn up for a meeting, that would be okay. But as the years went on, the Moonies got a bit more kind of, cocky or a bit more comfortable. And George Bush, what did he actually care? He didn't actually care. So he was a few times would go up and he'd drink from the goblet of the Mooney wine or whatever, and just kind of pray that it kind of doesn't get out there to the evangelical Christian community. But and then when the internet blew up, then suddenly the jig was up.
Yes, he was sprung.
He was sprung, and the Republicans couldn't just go sneak over.
Don't know what happens next though.
Who
takes over from Dr. Moon?
Well, no, he's still going to rule the world from Sky.
From the other place.
Yeah.
Interesting. So thank you for reminding me of the 70s. I think we had.
And they have mass weddings, by the way. Also,
mass weddings.
That's the other thing. So if you were a bit of a socially awkward, you could turn up and join the Moonies.
One of our archbishops, Malingo, I thought, was in fact excommunicated because he in fact did marry.
Oh, that's right.
Was it Dr. Moon's wife?
What is that African?
Yeah, Malingo. Had lunch in my house.
You had lunch with the African Catholic who married the Mooney?
Yeah, but he came to drive the devil out. Some Italian nun brought him to Melbourne in the 70s, and she lived across the road from our place, and she said, "Can he do mass?" I thought, I knew he was an exorcist, and I knew he was a pretty, jumping up and down type, and I thought this will brighten up our miserable lives. So when he came and did mass and did all kinds of things.
In South Melbourne?
Yes, and they fell down in the aisles, comrade.
Oh, my God.
They fell down in the aisles, and the old man said to me, "I'm not going to fall down in the aisle."
Because he got excommunicated by the Vatican because they said you're not allowed to be an exorcist who marries a Mooney.
Exactly.
Wow.
He wasn't excommunicated because he had lunch with me. No, he was all right while he was having lunch with me.
The secrets I
had
dig
lunch
up from
with Bob
you,
Santa Maria too, don't forget, in my house.
Great.
See?
Less interesting.
Well, truly Catholic. Truly Catholic.
We're going to be talking to
Angry, who spoke at my gala dinner.
And also Rick McPhee, who's a series producer of Go Back to Where You Come From, after this.
Exciting.
Sunday Night Safran
on Triple J.
Still to come on Triple J, we'll meet comedian Anthony Jeselnik, the man who gave Charlie Sheen a roastie. Plus, we'll cross to London to get all the goss on the Paralympics. From ABC Online, ramp-up editor Stella Young. Right now, though, in the box in Sydney, we've got rocker Angry Anderson and TV producer Rick McPhee, who were both involved in the latest series of Go Back to Where You Came From.
Hello, young men. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Hey, so what's the...
You sound very respectable.
Is Rose Tattoo, are they like still together? Or
Absolutely.
They are?
Yes,
And when you
we refuse to go away.
And when you perform, do you make a distinction between your solo stuff? So, like, if people turn up to hear suddenly...
They don't hear it.
Really? You're that strict?
I am.
Why?
Oh, because, I don't have it's too hard to carry a piano around.
Oh, okay, fair enough. If it's just that reason, I thought you might be, just
Certainly not.
Philosophically you disagreed with it. Or
No, certainly not. No, I love that song. In fact, I can't wait until I am allowed to grow up and I can do the clubs and finally make some money and I can be sitting there on a stool and suddenly you're seeing just the way I am.
And Rick, were you ever in a band? I feel like I have to share. You know what I mean?
Never in a band, no, unfortunately.
Okay. Now, Angry, you suddenly a few years ago, or you popped up to a lot of people as like a political activist.
Yes.
So where did that all come from?
I've always been politically minded. I was brought up in, like a lot of kids that grew up in Pascoe Vale, brought up in a largely, predominantly a Labor household, and was a Labor supporter of most of my life, and started to drift away from Labor, I suppose, not so much during the Hawke era, but I started to have fundamental differences during the Hawke administration, and certainly under Keating.
Yeah, and about what though?
Oh, I don't know. I just think that I think Labor relied too much on the old-fashioned view of unionism, etc. I think that and having a very personal family affinity with unionism, I was a close observer and in proximity speaking wise, and
so you hang on. So that means you're cynical about the unions, were you?
I very much believe this is the lefty that's still in me and will always be in me. I still see that the unions need to be there, and they played a fundamentally really important role, particularly in the aftermath of the Industrial Revolution. But those bad old days are over, and we can no longer look at the employer or the person who's largely responsible for supplying employment, therefore our bread and butter, as the bad guy. There's too few of those left, and I don't think that the majority of and did
you have bad or experiences yourself? Like you were a boss and things happened that you were shirty about, or was it?
No, not so much. No, I mean I remember as an apprentice now. I remember years ago addressing my industrial deafness. Now, I mean obviously there weren't the safety precautions that there are today, but as an apprentice as a fitter and turner in an engineering factory, I mean, there was no protection against the abuse that was heaped upon us as far as working wise. So that's where I went industrially deaf in the first place. But there was also we were very, very aware of the rorts of non-unionists as far as the union was there to protect the worker. Okay, put it this way. The union representatives would come. They would never go into the factory. They would always go into the boardroom. They were given 2 and 3 hour quite lavish lunches, and they were given crates of beer to take home, etc. And we used to be, as apprentices, we were asked to load the beer and whatever else into the boots of their cars, and they never inspected the factory for safety and regulations, and therefore there were workplace accidents. And I thought, now wait a minute, this is something fundamentally wrong here. But that was, I was too young and naive in those days to make to all the connections. But later on, when I realised that fundamentally the two things that influence us, apart from economics, of course, is religion and politics. And I've taken a great interest in both of those areas since I was in my 20s.
And when people shorthand, your position these days, I've heard them say, oh, you're trying to do some Australian version of the Tea Party movement.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, no. I mean,
you've got to hold your little finger up when you drink Come on.
I certainly do, Father Bob, as you know.
Well, he did. And Angry spoke at my gala dinner. The roast, I think it was.
It was supposed to be a roast. It actually turned out to be something quite different.
Didn't it? A eulogy.
So how does you mentioned that the things that make us different? What you said, religion, and what was the other one? Culture,
politics.
Politics.
Yeah, they help shape, unfortunately, our destinies, if you like, as a country or as a people. When I say unfortunately, I think there's other aspects of our living that need to be enhanced as important components as those two things. But
so how does that impact on your view of immigration?
I think immigration is it's a debate that's just particularly talking about Australia. Immigration is a debate that we need to have. I remember reading Geoffrey Blaney in the 70s, I think, and certainly in the 80s, his views on immigration, and my views coincide with his. I think it's too long in the tooth for now for it to be used as a political football, and I think the immigration is a thing that Australians need to debate, and openly and honestly, I take umbrage at the fact that you can't trust the Australian people for making decisions about themselves because they're not trustworthy. Au contraire.
But what if you're an immigrant or you're part of an immigrant community? What's your responsibility to Australia? Is your responsibility just not to start, do things illegally or whatever, or do you have a responsibility to try to blend in and say goodbye to your old ways?
I don't think you have to say goodbye to anything. I think my mother's Mauritian, and she came here in 1947, and she still has very, very strong ties to not only to Mauritius, but the Mauritian community as in people within Australia.
That's a little island off Africa, is it not?
It certainly is a very, very little island.
Francais, au contraire.
It's a French island. And who is it? Just white people live on that French island, or
certainly not? No.
Okay.
I mean, they're way in the minority. But getting back to assimilation, and it's all of a sudden assimilation's become a dirty word. Integration, I'm not so much sure that that's become a dirty word, but. Fundamentally, I mean, multiculturalism does not mean and should not mean that you should ignore the importance or the values and the morality, if you like, or the ethics of the host country. I think if we are to be a multicultural nation and be successful at it, we need to be able to recognise equally. I mean, minorities should not be able to dictate policy for the majority when it works against the majority being the host nation.
How do you qualify or quantify when something becomes a problem? Like, for instance, it's been, a decade since 9/11, and there seems to have been not too many, Muslims exploding things. So does that mean, it's...
What do you mean, in Australia or just generally speaking?
No, in Australia. What I'm saying is you can always find examples of...
We've caught a few trying to do that, haven't we, though?
But you can always find examples of people doing things wrong in all sorts of contexts. So,
yes, you can.
So... Well, how bad does something have to get before we say, that's actually a problem, rather than, stuff happens all the time in all sorts of areas. There's people drink driving, there's people abusing children, and there's bad people also in some of these ethnic communities who do bad. How do you, why is it seem to be the number one issue in Australia?
I don't think it is the number one issue, but then having said that, I think it gets a lot of profile, and I think it gets a disproportionate amount of attention from a certain sector of people who like to use it, again, as a beating stick or as a football. But I think it's something that we really need to look at very, very, very seriously in relation to historically looking at the world in the last, say, 30 years, particularly with host countries being like France, Germany, England, etc., and parts of America. The influence of Islam is a spreading influence, and it's a growing influence, and we need to look at it in a balanced and a fair way.
Now, do you think that Muslim immigrants, or maybe African immigrants and Middle Eastern immigrants, are they different from Italian and Greek and Vietnamese immigrants from generations ago? Because a lot of people would look at those groups and say that all worked out quite well with the Italians and the Greeks and the Vietnamese.
Yes, and I think it did, and I think the fundamental differences between those two places of reference, if you like, or departure have to be, calculated into the equation as well. I think things, and I grew up having to deal, when I say having to deal with it in different ways at different times with Italians and Greeks and Yugoslavs, etc., but one of the things that I think that we all had in common was that we were all Christianic in our motivation and our morality and the way that we applied our law, and also we had a very, very similar background as in Australia was, apart from the Indigenous people, the next peoples to arrive were predominantly British, and then of course very quickly followed by Europeans. So we've always had a long history, and we've always had a very, very healthy and a very important component from Asia, which is China. And so I think that our cultural fabric, if you like, has been built up from those sources, and now we have the world is now looking at Australia as a place to be. So that we really do have to carefully look at how do we see ourselves in 20 years as a culture.
With some of the Muslim groups who come in there, how do you make it? What are you sure that it's Islam that is the issue? Like, if you look at just say the Cronulla riots, right? Really, were the Muslim Australians there? Were they saying, "Oh, listen, my religious text tells me that these areas belong to me and Allah has given me," or was it more just a tribalistic thing that actually had very little to do with religion, and therefore could have been...
It had very, very little, anything to do with religion.
Yeah, okay. Well, but then
it had very, very little to do with racism. And I just, because living in Sydney now and knowing the dynamics of what caused Cronulla, you can't believe everything you read in the press.
But I guess by that you're saying that the biggest example of ethnic tensions between Muslims and non-Muslims that we've had in recent history actually didn't have anything to do with Islam.
It was more about testosterone.
Yep.
It was about young males claiming turf, and it just so happens that the two tribes involved one was predominantly motivated by the Christianic sort of sources, if you like, and the other most demonstratively by Islamic. But it wasn't about religion, and it wasn't about race. It was about one group of young males trying to muscle in on another group of young males' territory, and the young males did exactly what they were done for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They went, "That's not going to work here, buddy."
But if that's the case, it's been going like that for thousands and thousands of years. How should that impact on how we treat Muslim immigration then?
Well, the two things are two entirely different things. So one shouldn't impact on the other. But having said that, any immigration into any host country, which is as fragile as population as Australia is. So what I'm saying is that we are a large country in a physical sense with a small population. So, taking that into consideration, it's not going to be very, very difficult for a large influx of any people from anywhere around the world to impact or influence our cultural stability, if you like, or bring about instability or whatever. Now, the Italians, and you quite rightfully so, they came here in mass. Some years later, so did the Indo-Chinese. Undeniably, they all had an impact. Some of it was positive, and some of it was less than positive, and some of it was definitely negative. So we really have to carefully look at our future as a country. It's like, well, what do we want to be? Do we want to be, I think physicality is part of the answer, and that is we're geographically we're an Asian country, so I think we are destined to become more Asian, if you like, in years to come, because that's just a natural part of the natural selection.
Now we're going to go to a song, and Rick will talk to you more after this because, unfortunately, you're not you're not controversial enough. So, can you please, over this song break, just read a lot of right-wing literature? Okay. So then when I ask you questions, you say outrageous things. Thank you.
I've got something really horrible to say when you come back.
Sunday Night Safran on Triple J.
Stick around for American comedian Anthony Jeselnik. We'll ask him what it was like roasting the guy who started the winning phenomenon. That's coming up shortly. John Safran, Bob Maguire in the studio.
And we're talking to people in a little box in Sydney. Angry Anderson, who was a participant of Go Back to Where You Came From on SBS, and also the producer of said show, Rick McPhee. Hey, Rick McPhee, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Now, you're getting a lot of positive feedback for this show.
Yeah, it was great. It was a good one because the first one was successful, so the second one was always going to be a bit of a risk, second album syndrome and all that. But it's resonated and people seem to like it, and we've got great feedback.
Getting a bit cocky that you beat.
A little bit cocky.
You beat in the ratings. You got to be careful not to, when you're like the little guy and you suddenly you smash it out of the park in the ratings. You've got to be careful not to make that your angle, because then when the third season comes on, and just say it doesn't, you know what I mean, you've got to have some other argument for why the show deserves to be on air.
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
Anyway, that was just now. What did you learn from this show, Rick McPhee?
Well, what did I learn personally? I did the first one, so I sort of understood what happens to people when they're put in that position, and it's they're very sort of dangerous cities. Obviously, we went to this time, more dangerous than last time. People are put in confronting situations where they're sort of overwhelmed by the magnitude of the problem, by the poverty, by the desperation. And but that's the fascinating process. It is like a big social experiment to see whether those experiences and meeting those people and feeling those feelings for what they're seeing and doing has any sort of impact on or changes the way they feel about the issue.
Now, I saw you, Angry Anderson, on Q&A this week saying you changed your opinions based on experiencing the show. What was your old opinion, and what is your new opinion?
I had no understanding of what motivated people to come to Australia by boats, except that I saw it as, well, it's a way of jumping the queue. It's a way of just ducking under the legality, if you like, or the restrictions that regulation put on them, or whatever. In other words, taking the sneaky, underhanded, less than honourable way to get here. But I didn't understand the dynamics of the people that come here. Predominantly, up until a while ago, the larger majority of the people that came here from Afghanistan were Hazara or Hazari people. And once you've been there and you've lived in their homes and eaten from their table and listened to their stories, looked into their eyes and heard their stories of the way that they're persecuted. The people who persecute them in Afghanistan are other Muslims, and they're extremists, and they carry arms, and they're in the employ of the Taliban, if you like. And the Hazari people are moderates, and they will not bear arms. They're very modern thinking people. They want to live a life where they are free from those unreasonable sort of religious restraints that the extremists put on them. And so they're driven quite. Without being over dramatic about it, they are driven out because in fear of their lives. So I get it now, and I'll say to anybody, yes, I've changed my view on that one instant, on the fact that the Hazari people need to get out of Afghanistan. They need to save their own lives. They need to save the lives of their wives and children. And why wouldn't they do it? Any father would.
Now, Rick, wasn't there some woman from last year's show? Am I getting this straight? Where I saw her on TV and she was attacking one immigrant group for she thought were jumping the queue when she thought there was another immigrant group who should have been in front of them.
I think you're referring to Ray, and Ray did go to Africa last year and went to the camps in Kakuma camp in Kenya. So her particular thing is that those people. There's so many of them, and there's so few that get resettled. I think she still resents people who arrive by boat because she thinks they're taking the place of those people in the camps. I think that's what you're referring to.
Yes. Well, because I was like that awkward one where she's like, she's saying we need more African immigrants, but then bagging the other ones. So kind of made my head hurt a bit. Right. Can't people have real simple kind of positions, not complicated ones? Now, how do you think immigration is going to play into the next election? Is all the heat taken out of it now that there's been some kind of agreement reached between Labor and Liberal? You two.
What do you think, Angry?
I don't know whether I should go near that one or not.
You might be there. You might be in Parliament.
Well,
exactly.
That's the reason I'm not
when
going near it.
When are you standing, Angry? When are you standing?
I am up for pre-selection, Father Bob. I'm a national, and I want to be pre-selected for, as Barnaby so poetically put it, this is the first stash we can get you involved in. So let's go for a federal seat, and I'd be more than happy to run as a national for a federal seat. Yes.
Sorry for being dumb, but do Nationals and Liberals ever sit in the same electorate? Or?
Oh, they have to. Yes, absolutely. Oh, I thought you meant in the same room.
Stand.
They have to on certain occasions. Yes, indeed. In fact, I think in the spirit of good competition and fair competition and real democracy, two of the seats that I'm mooted towards, I'll be running against a Labor and a Liberal candidate.
Because then my question is, why did you go National and not Liberal?
I have a great affinity for people on the land on both sides of my grandparents' families. Many of them in Victoria are still on the land to this day. And as an Australian who grew up really, really believing that our history is something that we can be proud of, and I stand here to defend that now, much of our character, if you like, and the Australian character has grown from being on the land and battling the land and making a fist of it. So having said that, I have a great affinity for people. But I also understand that politically, I mean, we need to decentralise our cities to take the burden off them as far as while our population grows. But economically, stability-wise, a lot of our future, if we can stop this sell-off of our land and our water and our sovereignty, which is a ludicrous situation that we're involved in at the moment, if we can take back the control of our own country from foreign hands or stop it falling into foreign hands, a lot of our economic stability does lay still with mining, and then that will always play an integral part in our future economically. But the rural sector, the growing of food and supplying the immediate markets, which are Asia, of course, and I'm talking about Oriental Asia, not Western Asia. A lot of our future lays in the immediate sense and in the long term with the rural community. And I think with the few years that I've got to offer politics and service to the Australian people, I want to be part of that really exciting transition.
Now, Go Back to Where You Come From is available to watch online at sbs.com.au/go back. Thank you very much for joining us, Angry and Rick.
Thank you.
Me too.
See you soon, Father Bob.
Thank you, comrade.
You're listening to Sunday Night Safran on Triple J.
We're going to cross to London shortly to get inside the action of the Paralympics. Right now, though, in the studio with us is comedian Anthony Jeselnik.
We're going to play a little bit of his shtick.
My baby brother's in high school now, and we're close, but sometimes I'll try to take advantage of that, you know. A couple months ago, he calls me up, he goes, Anthony, I just cut school for no reason, and now I need you to write me a sick note and then forge Dad's signature and make it good. And I did my best, but I'm horrible at stuff like that. The teacher took one look at the note and said, Mikey, you expect me to believe this? You don't have AIDS. Oh, fantastic. If you guys like that AIDS joke. I've got some great news. You're going to love this next AIDS joke.
Anthony, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And you've just come in like a few hours ago.
First visit?
Yes, first visit to Australia, yeah.
Now, offensive comedy is always good newspaper fodder here in Australia. If any comedian ever says anything transgressive, you can expect for the next 2 weeks for the tabloids to be playing it up and asking, you know, why exactly did you say that offensive thing? You know, what does it mean? Do you think like transgressive comedians should have to like have a little explanation, an accompanying essay justifying their existence, or is just being funny enough?
I think being funny is enough. I always like when people ask me, you know, explain this or explain that, because my always explanation is, you know, basically go to hell. I'm a comedian. I can do whatever I want. And I don't think that, I think comedy is the place where you can talk about the worst things in the world. And if people get upset, it's kind of collateral damage to me. You know, I don't ever feel like I have to explain myself to anyone. And
I've noticed with comedy, ever since the internet blew up, is you can never cordon off anything anymore. Like, for instance, you can't be a Jew in New York who says some really offensive Jewish thing and everyone gets the context that, you know, you're Jewish and New York is mainly Jewish and that's the context. Suddenly it's out there everywhere for all 6 billion people to hear and the context changes. Does that make it harder to be a smart-ass, transgressive, offensive comedian?
I don't think it makes it harder. I think there's different problems. You know, it takes it out of like the smoky back room, you know, midnight show kind of thing where of course you can get away with more at midnight with people who paid to see that. When it's online, it's kind of like it's for everyone. Even if it's like somebody at noon is watching this, like this is inappropriate. Well, it's inappropriate to you now. But I don't consider it a problem. I think it helps, you know, to be honest.
And what do you think about things like Michael Richards getting in trouble for blowing up and saying the N-word?
Well, I think Michael Richards is a terrible comedian. He was funny on Seinfeld, but he is not a comedian in any way, shape, or form. And what he was doing, I mean, there are very intelligent bits that use the N-word in them. And I like Louis C.K. has a great one. You know, Artie Lang has a very good one. Lenny Bruce did a great one. But most people can't pull that off, you know. And Michael Richards was just yelling it for the sake of yelling it. And if that hasn't been caught on camera, it's not that big a deal, you know. But since the fact that people could see it, it ruined his career.
And also, he seemed to be in that unfortunate position of, you know, it happened when, like, YouTube first blew up and TMZ first blew up, so people hadn't quite got their bearings about this new world yet.
Exactly, and people see him as Kramer from Seinfeld. They don't see him as a comedian or someone who can say whatever he wants kind of thing. That's why, like, Tracy Morgan got in trouble, because people see him as, like, the wacky guy on 30 Rock as opposed to an insanely offensive comedian, which he's always been.
Now, when I was in America last, because he's not that big in Australia yet, or maybe he is, I just don't know about, is Daniel Tosh.
Yes.
And the thing I find interesting about him is he's like this white guy who's comes across as privileged, like he doesn't hide it, and just does the real offensive stuff that generally you don't think, like he seems to break this rule, because usually the offensive people are like, oh, I'm gay and being offensive.
Yeah.
Or I'm black, and that's why I get away with being offensive. Or at the very least, like I'm a poor white person getting away with being offensive. But he just has this persona, which is, I've grown up quite privileged. On top of that, I've won the genetic lottery, and I'm very handsome. Yeah. And I'm still going to do this wildly transgressive comedy. But there seems to be some weird rule that it doesn't, he gets away with it, and it doesn't actually come across as too cruel or offensive.
He gets away with a lot of it. I think he's kind of like your buddy. He's like the frat guy buddy. He's like the one offensive person, but he's your friend, you know. And he's come under a lot of fire in America. I don't know if it's made its way here about telling a rape joke on stage that got him into trouble. Whereas, you know, I think that I'm not your friend. Yeah. You know, I'm not your coworker hanging out. I'm like the worst person in the world. So every joke I make, you know, I open with a rape joke just to say I can do whatever I want, and if you don't like it, get out of here. Yeah.
And do you find it confusing when you meet people because they don't know you as a full person and they've taken just a slice of you, and then they don't get that you're only joking and blah, 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 blah?
Sure, but it's on them. Yeah. You know, it's not my fault. Like people who like criticize comedy or like I don't understand why you're doing this. It would be like if I went to a cricket game. I went to watch a game of cricket and started yelling, "Why aren't you playing baseball? What are you doing here?" That's on me. Yeah. So people meet me, and I'm a completely different person off stage than I am on stage. And if they don't understand that, they have some things to figure out. You know, I don't need to explain to everyone what's going on. I just have to, you know, live my life.
They take for granted with film today that in fact the person on the screen is not the same as the person in the street.
Exactly. A lot of comedians are themselves on stage. They just think that if I'm saying something. Like the clip you just played of my brother telling my brother he had AIDS or writing on a note, that never happened. But people can't believe that because they think that most comedy comes from real life, whereas everything I say is completely and totally made up.
Strange. I find that as an old person, I mean, I would have thought it was taken for granted. Once you're on the stage, that's a persona in its own right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And what do you reckon there's some sort of mild health benefit for transgressive comedy, like getting things out there? I remember watching this Australian comedy show when there were all these new laws coming in after 9/11 and everyone was scared or whatever, and this comedian just did a send-up of, you know, the government ad telling people to dob in people and watch out for what you see, and I couldn't even figure out what it meant. Like if you asked me to explain what's its satirical meaning was, I'd come up wanting, but still I just thought it released a lot of stress and a lot of tension just to take the mickey out of something, even if it doesn't have, you know, you can't really write an essay about
absolutely. Laughter is always a good thing, no matter what you're laughing at. You know, it's always good. And I think like every joke in my act is making fun of death or, you know, horrible things or tragedies or the worst things in the world. And it's never bad to laugh at those. It's basically a human being's only defense against that kind of stuff. I mean, life is going to get us all, you know, in some way. That why not laugh while we can?
And the other, I think, confusing thing about transgressive comedy is, like, because people like comedy to sometimes represent the underdog, and sometimes it's confusing who the underdog is. Like, is the dominant thing weighing all over us politically correct culture, and therefore you're standing up against that by saying something transgressive and offensive about race or sex or religion, or, you know, or other people who are the underdogs, you know, the Muslims, the women, and etc. And therefore a comedian saying that is actually just feeding into, you know, the bullying.
Well, I think that people want their comedy to make them feel smart. Everyone thinks that the comedy that they like is what comedy is. People will say you're not funny. No one ever says I don't think you're funny. Because if you say I don't think you're funny, you sound like an idiot, you know, or you're not funny to me, they sound like an idiot. It's like with music. You know, if Metallica puts out an album, they're not like, I really hope country music fans like this. They don't care. Yeah. Whereas in comedy, for some way, people get really upset if they don't think something's funny and take offense to it and want an apology even, you know, which is ridiculous to me.
What do you think is funny?
I think anything that surprises me is funny. I've been doing this 10 years. I see it as more like an intellectual level that even if you're sharing something, you better be surprising in the way that you're sharing it, because I don't care about your girlfriend. You know, I don't care about your breakup you went through. It doesn't matter to me. It's got to surprise me.
It's the way it happens.
It's got to be the way it happens or the way you deliver it. You know, and some of my favorite comedians are people who don't talk about dark subjects or anything like that, but they are hilarious because you never know what's coming, and it all kind of just clicks in your brain. It's like a synapse that fires, that connects two things. That I think is what comedy is all about to me.
And Louis C.K., he got in the press a lot, not just because of his comedy, but because he worked out a way to make heaps of money by cutting out the middleman. And just uploading his shows and charging people $5. I think it was obviously on the internet. It's trust, because it's obviously not that hard to.
You can steal anything you want on the internet.
Yes. But it really worked for him.
Oh, absolutely, and it's worked for people since. You know, I think more like Jim Gaffigan has tried it since then. Aziz Ansari has done it. I don't know if they've been as successful as Louis was, but Louis already had the audience. So once you kind of have people, you can get them. But it'll be interesting to see where that goes. It's something I'd certainly like to try out in the future.
Is it transferable, the humour from the US of A to Australia? You'll find out.
I think so.
Is there any guidelines or a book or something that says beware, beware?
No, I don't think there's like a reference. Like I talk about one of my things, Mike. I talked about Casey Anthony, which was a huge story in America where a woman killed her daughter, and there was a big trial about it. And she was attractive, so people were really into it. And then she ended up being found not guilty, and it was a big controversial thing. And I talk about that, but here I don't think that would play at all. No one knows who that is, and to set that up. To spend as much time setting up as I just had to do to you ruins the joke entirely. So that's about it.
When Jerry Seinfeld came, he opened with something about women and checkbooks. And so the audience really, because no one was there to kind of take down Jerry Seinfeld. Everyone wanted to laugh and was on his side. But whatever the cultural reference point that made it amusing to talk about women and checkbooks in America, just made absolutely no sense to anyone in Australia. But he managed to pick up on the second joke. So
I went to Ireland a few years ago, and I kept asking them. I was like, do you guys know what Xbox is? Do you guys know? And they kept saying, yes, yes, of course. And it ruined the show because they just kept saying, do you think we're idiots? Yes. But now I just go with it. If they don't get the joke, they'll get the next one, kind of thing. That you can't worry about.
And Ben Elton, not bagging anyone, I like Ben Elton or whatever, but I've noticed when he first came to Australia, you would do a bit of research and then try to pass off that he just understood all this, Yeah. Now we've all been down to Carlisle Street, haven't we?
Yeah. Now, what you say though, because we may never meet again, is that the sarcasm thing? Mm-hmm. That you say that in fact it's difficult, it's not transferable. That in Australia, sarcasm is oftentimes the way of being funny.
Yeah.
But in the United States of America...
Well, I think it depends where you are, because I used to always defend Americans, because everyone in Australia goes, Americans don't understand sarcasm. But I thought they did, whenever I went to, just New York or whatever, or Los Angeles. But, last year I went to Mississippi, and I began to understand the whole thing of Americans not understanding sarcasm.
Yeah, Mississippi is a certain kind of America, I'll tell you that. Yeah.
You go. One of the first things that occurred to me there was you really understood why Jay Leno beats David Letterman in the ratings as soon as you spend a bit of time there. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, it's very, I don't know, people don't like to get their feathers ruffled that much. And sarcasm, it can be, I live in sarcasm, so I love it. But yeah, some people just don't want to have to deal with it. They'd rather everything be straight up and tell me what you're going to tell me what you're saying, and then tell me what you just told me, and that's how they get by.
Now, a lot of people in creative worlds, when they were young, they explored a lot of different things or had different dreams. One week they want to be in a band, next week they want to write graphic novels, next week they want to be a journalist or whatever. What did you always just want to be a comedian, or did you dabble around with other things?
I didn't know what I wanted to be. I always loved comedy, but being a comedian to me didn't seem like a realistic goal. It seemed like something you couldn't do. I grew up in Pittsburgh, this small steel town in America that no one was really becoming a comedian out of that. And I just knew how I wanted to live my life. I didn't want anyone to be able to tell me what to do. And I didn't want... I was tired of being misconstrued. Like, I would make a joke and people wouldn't understand. They would think I was a jerk instead of being like a sarcastic, jokester. And I thought if I'm a comedian and I'm a professional and I get some level of fame, that no one can ever... They just know. And you can get away with whatever you want when you're a comedian if you're good enough at it. And that's kind of why I gravitated towards this. Now, you're part of... Rottofest? Rottofest, yeah. What's that? Oh, you probably know more about it than I do. Okay. It's a festival on Rottnest Island in Perth, and then touring around the country the rest of the week. Oh, really? Where else are you going? I will be I'll be here in Melbourne. Yes. I'll be in Adelaide. I'll be in Sydney, I think. And maybe one more. There's supposed to be someone here to tell me these things, but I don't know. I just kind of go where they point. Yeah. And finally, I'll go to vultureculture.com. I should have asked you this earlier. What's up with the surname? What's going on there? With Jeselnik? Yeah, what does that mean? I found out it doesn't mean anything. I just found out it's Slovenian recently. Because if you Google Jeselnik, I'm the only thing that comes up. So Jeselnik's all around the world. Well, you didn't know your parents were Slovenian. Are they Slovenian? My parents were just like, I don't know, German or something, somewhere in that area. No one really cared. Even when I found out it was Slovenia, I found out where it was the brothers who came here from Slovenia. They still didn't care. Wow, I find that because obviously my obsessions. But remember we were interviewing Weird Al Yankovic, and he also we're going, Yankovic or whatever. What does that mean or whatever? And he said something like, it's like. He goes, but it might be Croatian. And I just could not believe. No, couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. You've got to learn to be more tribalistic. I'll find out the Jeselnik tribe and get a tattoo or something. Maybe you can start doing ethnic comedy as a Slovenian. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for having me, guys. This was great. You're listening to Sunday Night Safran with John Safran and Father Bob Maguire on Triple J. Shortly we'll hook up with Stella Young, so to speak, ABC's ramp-up editor. And she's at the Paralympics. I'm Bob Maguire, John Safran. We're together in the studio and making a lot of sense. Bob, do you know who Iphigenia is? No. It's like in some Greek myth, I think. She's one of the... Who? Oh, yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, you'll have to Google it. Iphigenia. She's like some daughter and something. Yeah, Google it. Whose daughter is she? I can't Google it. You can Google I only bring that up because I'm reading this book called Iphigenia in Forest Hills, which has nothing to do with the Greek myth. No. It's you'll be unsurprised to know it's a true crime book written by a woman called Janet Malcolm, who I'll tell you about one of her other books. Now, is Iphigenia a victim of crime? I can't figure out which character in this book is meant to be the Iphigenia character. Yeah. But I'm only up to page 60. But anyway, one interesting thing in this book, because it's a relatively recent book that comes up, is apparently the latest in fingerprint technology. The latest is that fingerprints aren't as accurate as every single person thinks they are, based on decades of being told, if you find these prints and they match that person. Apparently it's just not like that. Like, there's doubles, or it's just not as accurate as people think. So if you get caught... But they use the eyes now, isn't it? Because someone was, I think, in one of the bombings, maybe in Madrid or something, one of those terrorist bombings, there was this guy who was arrested based on the perfect match of the fingerprints. Couldn't possibly have been there. And he was thrown... And then they found this other guy who, I don't know how fingerprint technology... But he was also the exact match. So if you're caught in a police cell, and they're saying you've got the exact match. You can ask for. But apparently that's a very recent development, and for like decades, everyone just thought, of course, matching fingerprints. You've got the guy. Yeah, now it's the eyeballs. Now this woman has written one of the scariest. Not this book. This is just if you're a young writer or you're thinking of becoming a journalist, I highly recommend you read a book she wrote. I don't know how long ago. Called The Journalist and the Murderer, or The Murderer and the Journalist. Yeah. It's the most wince-inducing book ever, because it's about a journalist. It's a true story about this journalist who lures a murderer into revealing his story to her, and she sends all these like letters where she sort of slightly misrepresents her intentions, and I'm going to help you get out, I'm going to help, and all that kind of stuff, and then the book she ends up writing isn't at all like that at all. And so she basically had duped this murderer. And that in itself and then he... Because I read it so long ago, I forget the exact details, but it's something along the lines of, then the murderer takes the journalist to court, like for defamation or something. And
even in conservative America, where everyone hates killers, and even though people hate killers in general, people were so disgusted by her rodent, journalist, creepy, manipulative behaviour, and that they went on the side of the murderer instead of the journalist.
And it was made into a film?
I'm not sure.
No, I saw a film like that, and I can't remember the name of it. So a bit spooky, eh? Spooky, a bit weird.
And because you know when someone gets busted, like for doing something, like this week, you know, there's been in the crime fiction world, there's been this a successful crime writer. I understand. I don't know who he is, or I've never heard of him. Not James Elroy, but R.J.L. Elroy, I think his name is, and he was busted for writing self-congratulatory reviews of himself on Amazon.com, and also, but not just like, oh, this book's kind of good or whatever. It's like, it touched my soul. This man has a way to reach out and stroke your intellect and your senses.
Self-promotion.
And then also writing, like bagging his crime competitors, you know, and other boring output.
You've never tried that, you won't.
No, I haven't. I didn't think about it.
Well, think about that for your own book.
Maybe I can go on iTunes. Yeah, I can go on iTunes and
this book,
pump up Sunday Night Safran.
Yes, I have never read any book like this book. This must be in your bucket list.
Have you ever? I'm trying to think if I've ever misrepresented.
Read it and die.
Have I ever? I'm just trying to think. Have I ever I think I have. I'm trying to think if I've ever misrepresented myself, like on the internet, like posted something. Yeah. And
but it doesn't.
I'm very tempted.
Mind.
I'm very because I've got that. As I've told you before, I've got this this rule that I don't want to leave a paper trail on the internet, of throwing a tantrum or having a go at someone.
No, you want the internet to be the one place
where
your reputation is unsullied.
I just think it's just not helpful for me. Like, I don't think anyone wants to read, hey, John, attacked some 14-year-old for writing him this tweet telling him he lisps too much. Like, no one wants to see that. So I don't give that.
And it couldn't even be construed as being humorous.
Someone did attack me this week, and I held back. It was
answered. Because I deleted it before, or like I did this week, put something up and then threw it in the trash can.
Oh, really?
It was already up. I thought it was a bit dark.
Now, I'd like to tell you more about
Stella,
this
where
tweet,
is she?
but
Where is she?
Unfortunately, we've got to go to a song because Stella's waiting in another country in London to tell us.
Oh, God, we better be careful.
About all things disability and all things Paralympic-wise.
Right.
Sunday Night Safran on Triple J.
You're listening to Sunday Night Safran on Triple J. I'm Bob Maguire, John Safran, joining us all the way from London as a friend of the program, ABC Ramp Up editor Stella Young, who's hanging out at the Paralympics. G'day, Stella.
G'day, Bob. How's it going?
Good, mate, good.
Hey, Stella, I hear it's closing ceremony time at the moment.
Yeah. Sunday night will be the closing ceremony for the Paralympics. So it's a few hours away yet. You can tell I'm already completely exhausted from all the action that's been going on over the last 11 days. It's been pretty intense.
Now, one question I had about the Paralympics, is there any debate or tension behind the scenes with people who are competing if they're in the same event and they're like, oh, actually, I think I'm at far more of a physical disadvantage than this other person, so why are we in the same race?
Well, not really, because the classification system is pretty good. So all Paralympic athletes have a classification, which means that they compete in events against people with that same classification, or in the case of something like basketball or murder ball, their classification is parallel to kind of a point system, so you have a certain amount of points on the court at any given time. So, for example, our best wheelchair rugby player is a 3.5, and our worst, not worst, but kind of most impaired, I guess, is a 0.5. And on the wheelchair rugby court, you can only have a maximum of 8 points per team on the court at any given time. So it's every effort is made to kind of make it fair.
Really? And there's never any, no one ever's like, oh, how did that guy get in to be in the same event as me? You're saying no?
Well, occasionally I think that there's much more kind of tension about who uses what aids.
Yes.
Sport. So Oscar Pistorius, you would have seen last week, lodged a protest after he lost a race that no one expected him to lose, because no one expects him to lose ever. And it seems that Oscar doesn't expect him to lose ever either. And he was beaten by another runner and straight away said his prosthetic legs are too long. And they've actually been cleared by the International Paralympic Committee. Prosthetics have to be a certain proportion of your body length, I think, and it's measured with arm span and chest width or whatever. It's highly calculated and highly kind of scientific.
And so, what do you think? Are you happy with his prosthetics? Do you accept, or do you think our friend had a point that it was unfair?
Well, I think it's an issue that's a really interesting kind of one to look into. Because he did look really tall, the Brazilian guy next to Oscar. He looked very, very, he looked much taller on his blades than he did on his walking legs when he was on the podium, where he was quite a lot shorter than Oscar. So I think he may have actually had a point, but I think his downfall was that he complained straight after the race. You know, it's always a bit unbecoming when people blame something else for their lack of performance, I guess.
And with these prosthetics, are certain events going to become more about money than about skill, in that if you come from a rich country and you've got rich sponsors, you'll be able to get these prosthetics, and so a lot of the world is going to be alienated, because if you're from, say, Africa, you're not going to be able to ever compete in those events?
Yeah, I mean, it already is like that. There's, for example, Cambodia has the most people with amputations from landmine injuries, and yet they have one competitor in the Paralympics, because most people don't have any access to prostheses. They certainly don't have access to the high-tech ones that we have in Australia and in other countries where people are just better resourced. So I think that it's already creating that divide in categories where the athletes rely on technology. Of course, not all categories. It's not relevant for all categories, but it certainly is for some, certainly for athletics.
And so, do you reckon in future Paralympics they might have parallel competitions, like athletics with prosthetics and athletics without, or does that just not work?
Well, I think that this is the last time we'll see double-leg amputees race against single-leg amputees, because that's just not working. The single-leg the double-leg amputees have an advantage in that while it takes them longer to get off the blocks, because they need to put more energy into that initial start, they've got much better cruising power once they get going, because, they don't have lactic acid build up in their calves. There's a whole range of advantages to having two artificial legs as opposed to one in those races, and it's become really clear this time around that the double-leg amputees are at a distinct advantage.
And what about steroids and things like that? Is that an issue in the Paralympics?
Well, actually, it seems like the talk here is less about drugs than it is about what's called boosting. So a lot of athletes in the past have actually been sprung doing things to themselves to heighten their physiological response. So, for example, I heard about a guy wrapping piano wire around his genitals because he couldn't feel them, and tightening it to induce heightened heart rate, heightened blood pressure, to give him a physiological advantage over his competitors. People sitting on pins, stabbing themselves in the leg, all that kind of stuff, which they can't feel if they've got some level of paralysis, but certainly still induces that physiological response.
And listen, can I just ask one question? Because I'm reading from the notes, but your comments on Matt Cowdery swimming against James Magnuson, and you said it was entirely unfair to Magnuson because Cowdery's performance was so much better.
Yeah, they didn't actually swim against each other.
But separately, but still comparably.
Yeah, Matt's an S9 classification in the Paralympics, and he, that means he has half a missing arm. And, you know, he's a really amazing swimmer, and yet no one talks about what a great swimmer he is in the Australian context, because Paralympic sport is kind of overshadowed very much by the Olympics. I don't know what the feeling's been like there, but the coverage on television over here in the UK during the Paralympics has been just incredible, and it means that everyone is talking about the Paralympics.
Yes.
And I know they're broadcasting on the ABC in Australia as well, but I wonder if it has quite the same effect as it has here.
Now, we actually want to talk to you about so much more stuff, but we've ended up just talking all about the Paralympics, so you're going to have to come in when you're back in Australia, if that's okay with you.
I certainly will. That sounds great.
Okay, well, I'll put you to the producer and we'll pencil something in the diary. And good luck, and have a safe flight back.
Oh, thank you. I will. I'll see you soon.
Ta-da.
Sunday Night Safran. Triple J.
You're listening to Sunday Night Safran with Bob Maguire and John Safran in the chair.
I watched a clip on the internet of that comedian Bill Maher.
Yes.
Who does that political comedy show in America. What's it called? Real Time with Bill? Anyway, whatever. And he has like panel discussions. And they were taught with, you know, people who are into politics, but maybe they're a bit of a celebrity too. And they were talking about Clint Eastwood and his performance at the Republican convention, where, you know, he spoke to the empty chair. Anyway, everyone knows it or whatever. And the point of the discussion was that everyone was so distracted by Clint Eastwood and what he did that no other message came through the Republican convention. But the problem with this discussion is that Jason Alexander from Seinfeld, George Costanza, was on the panel, and you could barely pay attention to this discussion because he's got this new hairpiece. He's like just trying to get it with, hey, now that guy you knew for 10 years with the bald head in Seinfeld, now I just have hair. And like, what are you meant to do about that?
What, say anything? Did anybody say anything?
No one said anything, except you couldn't concentrate because it was, I guess you usually think people get a hair transplant or a wig or whatever when they think they're going to get away with it. And so he's coming from some other angle, and because he must know that people know he used to not have hair. But he's got this reverse psychology toupee, because what it is, it's a thinning. It's really clever, because most people, when they go for the toupee or the hair transplant, it's like, well, how much hair can I put on?
Yes.
But his hair, I don't know how he's done it, but his transplant is intentionally this sort of like
fading hair.
It's got fading hair, so it's credible.
Yes. But I mean, because he's been known publicly on the screen as being bald.
Yes.
You need an explanation, maybe.
But people are saying, I was reading people commenting on the internet saying, well, if you're a woman, you're allowed to do all these things, and that's that.
Aren't. You see what I mean?
And so you've just got to get your head around that he's doing something, and he knows that you know, but that doesn't matter.
It's as if he came in with a handbag.
Yes.
He comes in with a handbag on his head, isn't it? See how easy it is to explain these things without causing offence.
Yes.
That would go over well, wouldn't it? Oh, hello, George. What's his name? George.
Yeah, Jason Alexander.
Well, that'd be bad enough to start calling him George, wouldn't it? Jason, I noticed that you're wearing your handbag on your head. See? Not an offensive remark or anything. So are you flying away or anything?
No. I'm stuck in my flat.
Are you hanging out to fly away?
No. I'm stuck in my flat.
Oh, well, are you going to ask me if I'm hanging out to fly away?
One thing.
I don't think I will fly away.
I forgot to mention this. I met up with a Collingwood footballer. A
real Collingwood footballer.
Yes, chatted for quite a while or whatever. So I might. Do you reckon I should just like go for Collingwood?
No, should I go? Yes, I think you should.
Because I'm not really that emotionally involved with AFL at the time.
No, I think Collingwood would be good for you because it's specially designed for mad people.
Because like Stephen Mayne, that kind of writer and politician, he goes up for election. Because I know him. If he's on the ticket when I go in the booth, I don't ask any questions about his policies. I'm just like, oh yeah, my friend, da-da-da. So I'm wondering, with that same logic, should I now go for Collingwood now that I've had this positive, nourishing experience? No names.
No.
For several, I had a very, very long chat.
I think that would be acceptable.
Okay.
Bonding, that kind of. Plus, you haven't noticed that I myself am a Collingwood supporter. You haven't.
Yes.
That hasn't come to your attention at all. See.
Yeah.
Because it's trivial, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not at all important.
That would be bad, because I don't think anyone wants to listen to us agreeing with each other.
No, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. So if I went with Malthouse to Carlton and changed allegiances, that would be contentious.
Now you can follow us on Twitter. Either go Father Bob or go to John Safran, or go to Facebook and type in Sunday Night Safran, or go to SoundCloud. SoundCloud's good, Bob.
I'm not up to Sound.
It's like the podcast, Lab. But you can type comments, dear listener. So you can listen to this, what you're listening to now.
Yeah, right.
And then, like, oh, John, what a jerk. I can't believe you sounded like such an idiot when that person came in. Idiot. So you can do that over the...
Oh, that's nice.
Yes. Or you could say something nice, whatever.
All right.
And what else can you do?
Well, I said...
download the podcast. Now, listen, I know you were burnt last week, dear listener, because there was some technical kerfuffle with the podcast.
Yeah. But you fixed it up in an afternoon.
It's all fixed up now, so download the podcast.
All right.